Hey, welcome back to JG3 Reviews. My name is James, and I like to share with you what I find on my little explorations out into the fountain pen world. And sometimes that's a pen, sometimes it's paper, sometimes it's ink. Today, it's actually two out of those three. It is a pen and an ink that I really do like. This is the Majohn C4, not that C4 YouTube. Don't be flagging my channel. And it is an eyedropper pen with a safety valve. And that is what makes this eyedropper one you really should check out. Now, what's in this little eyedropper of mine? That would be Robert Oster African Gold. It might not be all that pretty in this pen, but let me tell you, when you put it on paper, this is a beautiful ink. So let's spin that camera and take a closer look. All right, this is how the pen comes with you unless you have a seller that lets you opt out of the box and save a few bucks. Always a good idea if you don't care a thing about getting the box, which sometimes, most of the time, I don't. But every now and then I will opt for the box. Here you have the manual, so that comes in both English and in Chinese. And that gives you all the instructions you need in order to fill up the various Mahjong filling mechanisms, such as the eyedropper, which is our pen right here. So, handy little thing to have, but not as handy as this. This is the included eyedropper, and if you don't have a syringe, that's what I use to fill up pens and cartridges and things like that, then you need one of these to fill an eyedropper, and then we get to the pen. This is the Majohn C4 eyedropper pen, and a few things jump out at me immediately when I take this out of the box. One is really nicely done acrylic. Now, your pen will not come with this, let's be honest, baby diarrhea colored ink. Only while it's in the bottle. It looks great on the page, but this and Noodler's Golden Brown, probably not real demonstrator friendly inks. Some people may look at that and just wonder, what on earth are you writing with? Anyway, the pen has wonderfully turned acrylic, and it has these big chunks at the end of the barrel and at the finial that are polished really nicely and look good. I really love that, and so immediately my eye goes there. The second thing I notice is the clip, which at first I wondered if that was just a glorified roll stop, but it's not. It's actually a functional clip, as long as it is kind of a long pen, as long as your pocket is deep enough, or your case or whatever you're using, it's going to work. So I found it to be pretty stiff, springy, but very functional clip. So I like it. There's something else about that clip, though, that's awfully familiar, and I think it lies behind it, and that is on the nib, which you will notice is still branded Moon Man. They're still working through their warehouse full of Moon Man branded nibs, and that doesn't bother me at all. The other is the logo, which is meant to be the point of a nib and a drop of ink. And look at the similarity between the logo and the clip. I like that. Subtle, but kind of neat and true to their brand, and I think that's good. The more that they develop of their own design and design language, the better, even if it just starts with something as simple as the nib logo and the clip. You know, we want to encourage those things. Unique design is a good thing, and the more the better. You got to start somewhere, right? The second thing that you come down to is the trim ring, which does have the newer branding of Majohn, and it's nicely laser etched into the gold trim there on that trim ring. And of course, there's nothing else on it. No model name, no logo, simply Majohn. Then we come farther down, and we don't want to get down here just yet. What do you see in there? Since this is a demonstrator, that is the safety valve. When you twist the knob here at the end, you will notice that valve opens up. That's actually enough. You don't have to open it all the way, and actually you don't even have to open it that far, and then you will be able to get ink in your pen. Let me show you this. This is kind of cool. You notice the reservoir right in there. Maybe you can see that, and there's a little bit of a drop of ink there, but it's not full. Now that I've opened that, when I turn it, you will notice that reservoir there will fill up with ink. And that allows you to have a bit of ink in there so that even when you've closed the safety valve, see, now this chamber is sealed off, you still have some ink there, and that means you can sign a few things and make a few notes without having to open the safety valve every time. Just quick jots, you don't have to bother, you've got enough ink there. It's not enough ink and air, you really have to worry about it burping or anything like that. I've had none of those issues. It has worked very, very well. Then we come on down and you notice there are lots of threads here, and that's good. You open this up, and that's enough again, because you see now that some of the ink I had just put in that reservoir has fallen back into the ink chamber, and all of this is now open once again. That's a good thing. That valve keeps it from burping. It keeps it as the pen warms up, either because of the temperature in the room or as air contracts and expands because of if you're on an airplane going up and down, the change in pressure, driving up to a cabin in the mountains, any of those things. It seals that off and prevents leakage, burping, those kinds of things. When it's open, of course, it can do those things, although I've actually not had a problem with that, with this pen or with these valveless eyedroppers over here, but it can happen, okay? So remember that. My first couple of eyedroppers did not do well. None of my Mahjons, I think this is one of Mahjohn's strengths, none of my Mahjons have ever had big problems with burping or leakage or anything like that. I find them to be well-made and reliable eyedropper pens, and they're kind of my preference at this point in that regard. Anyway, when you're done with the pen, you would simply close that valve. But I do want to say one more thing. When you open this all the way and are able to pull this back, you should, I did, coat this with silicone. There is, as you can see there, that rubber or silicone gasket, and you want to make sure that that has a good long life, and so you might coat that again. I did. I coated the threads, and I coated this rod, and also up here. When you want to fill the pen, this unscrews. It's a little stiff because there is an O-ring that you're kind of pushing against as you open the pen. Lots of threads. That's a good thing. Again, lots of threads means less leakage, so that's a plus. You have this O-ring, kind of doing a little bit of a risky thing here, opening this up with ink in it. And I would put silicone grease on these threads, and I did, and on the O-ring, just for insurance. And you can see the piston and the valve rod there. It's all good. And you fill the pen with ink. Holds about 2 milliliters. I didn't have that big a sample of this ink, so I couldn't fill it all the way up to show you. But that is a really good amount of ink, a whole lot more than in a cartridge converter pen, and really a lot more than in most piston-filled pens, because piston-filled pens do hold more ink. They don't hold as much as eyedroppers because you have to have room in here for the movement of the piston, and that takes away room from the reservoir size. So about where this ink comes to is where the piston would be on a piston filler, just to give you an idea of the increased capacity that you get from a pen like this. All right, all that capacity has to go to a good purpose, and that good purpose is writing. So let's do a quick size comparison so you can see how big this pen is, and then we'll put ink to paper. All right, first I want to show it in regard to other eyedropper pens. Here you have that Majohn Q1. I like to call this my pickle pen, and it's a great little eyedropper with a number 6 nib. Odd form factor, one reminiscent of a platinum pen from back in the 90s. Then you have the Majohn S5, a really good eyedropper that has a flat end so you can stand this up while you eyedropper it if you're careful enough. And then there is the Pen BBS 469, which has 2 ink reservoirs because it has a nib at both ends. Love this pen, really good, reliable eyedropper as well, and it gives you options like what I have here, a calligraphy nib in one end and a standard nib in the other, plus you get to have 2 different ink colors if you so choose. That's the way I usually do it. Great, great pen. You can check out the review down in the description below. And then the Wankai Mini, another great eyedropper pen that is ridiculously reliable. Every time I want to write with this pen, it writes first time, every time. It is actually, oddly enough, out of these pens, the one that can also take a cartridge, which is kind of wild. I've never done it, have no need to, but I do like that pen, and it is great. And then to compare it with pens that are a bit more familiar, here is the Lamy All-Star, the Jinhao X159, very similar in size, that pen, and a TWSBI 580 ALR. And here are the pens unposted. I won't bother posting since the Majohn C4 does not post. All right, open up that valve. Let the ink flow, right? Again, it does not post. I'm using today rhodia paper, lined because I don't know where I put my dot pad. I have no idea. This is the Majohn C4. Medium. And ink again today is Robert Oster African Gold. I like this ink. Here it is on Tomoe River paper, the old stuff. And you'll notice that it has really nice shading. You probably noticed in my writing just then that it's darker at the beginning after it's been sitting there for a second, and then gets golder as it goes, and then you get nice shading. Here's a swab of that ink. And even though I'm really not always a fan of yellow, gold, lighter colored inks, this one has enough character to the ink and to the color and the shading and everything that I really do like this ink, which is bad because I'm almost out of this sample, and that means I gotta buy another bottle of something. Oh no. It never ends, does it? It just never ends. That's okay. When you find a good one, you find a good one. And speaking of finding a good one, I like this pen. If you're looking for a good eyedropper pen, you don't want one that breaks the bank, but you do want one that's special. You want one that has a safety valve. You want one that has good quality. You're not going to go wrong, I don't think, with this pen. And there's nib swappability as well, not just with Majohn's nibs, but with standard number 6 nibs as well. Very good thing. Really not sure what all those things have to do with each other, and I don't even know if I spelled that correctly. But it sure sounds good, doesn't it? Well, you didn't think I was going to do the same old sentence as always, did you? Never, never. Okay, so the pen writes really well. Let me just do the old speed test. Flip the paper here so it fits in camera view, and just see how the pen keeps up. I'm just going to write my normal speed test gibberish. Very good. Very good. Now, the ink is light, so you may not be able to quite make it out, but I actually don't see, maybe right there, no skips. It gets light right here. That may be the pen, that may be the ink. It may be a combo, maybe a little bit light there. Yeah, I think it did pretty well. Not bad at all. Again, with my lighting, it might be hard for you to see, but that kept up quite well. You can also, by the way, see how nicely this ink shades. I really like it, and in an even wetter pen, even more character. In fact, look at this as it's dried while I was doing that. You get even more shading, of course, as it dries. Just looks great. So the African Gold ink from Robert Oster, I highly recommend if you like that kind of a color. Really neat character to that ink. And it needs a worthy pen. And I think this is one. What are the pros and the cons? Well, a con might be that short clip, depending on where you're normally going to carry this. If you have, for example, I have a pen case where I could not slip this over that pen case loop because the clip isn't long enough to go past the material, and the material was thick, and I was afraid it might damage the acrylic if it put too much pressure on it. So there is that. I would call that a negative. As far as the construction of the pen, it seems really nicely done. High quality machining, high quality polishing. I'm impressed with the fit and finish of this pen. Really good. I have not had any issues whatsoever burping or leaking or anything like that.
Stop it!
So the valve works, and I appreciate that. And I don't really have any major cons on the pen. It's just a very simple design. It's a simple mechanism, actually, that makes all of that work. I guess, really, if there was going to be a big con, it would be if there's an issue on durability, maybe at this end of the mechanism over time. But there's no way for me to know that just yet. Time will tell on that. Otherwise, let me close the valve while I'm talking about it. Otherwise, everything so far looks good. I'm enjoying the pen. The nib writes really well, smooth, just the slightest kind of the feedback I like, it right in the sweet spot of what I like. All right, that is my review of the Majohn C4, an eyedropper with a safety piston, safety valve that seems to work really well and does write very well. God bless you. Have a great week. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share with a friend who might be interested in this pen.